Um, I've got a PowerPoint here.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yes, hello.
Hello.
We
Yeah,
can
that's
hear you.
David. I've joined with David.
Oh, okay.
I've joined
David.
with David. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right. I'll start, and other people will join. And I wanted to say to you that, there are good ways to write a PowerPoint and bad ways. And PowerPoints for most people are full of pretty pictures. There are no pretty pictures in this. You guys all know what you're doing. And so I'm going to walk through this. And as I said to William a minute ago, we're in this together. And we're essentially trying to solve a problem for Malawi. And everybody in the DESTUDIO, I think, has a role in that problem. And here we go, okay? Hopefully it will come up. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
All right, okay, I didn't know that we could. All right, I'm gonna start on this. So what we're gonna talk about, and the key word there is we, what we are gonna talk about is the productive use of renewable energy, or sometimes called pure. And hold on a second here. And I honestly think, and I think Chief Finero agrees on this, that pure is a key to solving what we can call the 85-11 problem. And the 85-11 problem is a short way of saying what you already know. Malawi is 85% rural and only 11% connected to the national electric grid. That's the 85-11 problem. So the way around that, the way to solve that is to create distributed renewable energy, or sometimes called just DRE, D-R-E. And when you look at the maps, when you see the level of connectivity, it's a no-brainer, frankly. You have to go this way because, as you very well know, ESCOM is not capable of scaling up their national grid and extending it to rural areas in the near future. I'm not going to put blame on them for that. All countries go through this, but we really need to build off-grid energy supply. And in order to do that, you need off-grid energy demand. So pure has a lot of definitions, but the one we're going to work with here, I hope you can see it, is activities that involve utilization of renewable energy. The key word there is utilization, electric and non-electric energy, heat, mechanical energy, activities that enhance income and welfare. So you step back a minute and you ask yourself, can you really have improved education, healthcare, and commerce in rural areas without energy? To me, the answer is a resounding no. So we've got to find a way. And again, obviously different kinds of energy, biofuel being quite different from electricity. But it's one thing to say, all right, I'm going to have electricity, but you can have electricity that's entirely not useful. There are a lot of ways to waste it. And there's always an argument about television. It doesn't draw much electricity, but does it really help in terms of people's lives? Maybe yes, maybe no. And you don't want to use it on for foolish enterprises. I would even argue, for example, if you look at Zambia, they use a gigantic amount of electricity to produce copper, which is mostly sold to China. And does it help the Zambian economy overall? Well, that's debatable. Let's say it. So what we're looking at here is how do we build really useful energy that improves people's lives? And so there are other ways to look at it. So these are what I call augmented definitions. I went through a lot of sources saying, all right, what are we really talking about here? And for those of you up in agriculture, to be sure you have a lead role. But I want you to focus on the last line down there. socioeconomic uses of electricity. So you can have a productive use that's a school that uses energy or a health clinic that uses energy. And so it's not just classic business. So there are multiple advantages of productive use. The most obvious is economic. And you all read fast, so I'm not going to sit here and read PowerPoints to you. That's the single most boring thing in the world. You've probably been subjected to that too many times in life already. But I ask you to look at the third bullet down here. Enterprises that use motive power, in other words, electricity to move machinery, move solar irrigation, whatever. Anything that has motive power has a greater ability to pay for energy than just solar, than the household. So if you're like my great friend Jones and Talcott and others who are doing solar home systems, that's great, that's terrific. But it doesn't really lift the place out of poverty. It helps one home, but it doesn't help in a village unless you can network with them. Probably Jones would give me a big fight on that, and we probably will have that argument, but right now, again, it's about building enterprises. So who builds social enterprises? Answer, you do. It's Flame Tree, it's you guys at the DESTUDIO. So you can start to see that I think you have a role there. And at the moment, I'm going to leap way ahead. I'm going to give you my conclusion right now. We're about 15 slides in advance. My thought is that the DESTUDIO can be a platform to bring together people who do supply, demand, and other functions to create the partnerships that really build productive use. On the socioeconomic side, again, look at the impact of energy if you use it wisely. They're all smart. Think of the role it has in gender equality. It's safety of women because of lighting and work to do and not having to haul water. Maybe if you could pump water using electricity. So it has a gigantic social economic implication. Health, education, safety. And I should have a whole separate slide for the environmental and climate benefits. Energy can be misused in that way as well. But for the most part, especially consider deforestation in many, many countries, including Malawi, this really makes sense in lots of ways. So then the national advantage of it, here's an argument you may or may not be aware of, but I really want to stress it. When I started to think about Pure and Flame Tree about a year and a half, 2 years ago, I talked to people at a group here in the United States called NREL, National Renewable Energy Laboratory. It's in a state called Colorado. And they had done a lot of work on Pure. And they made the point that you're really not going to have the investment that Malawi needs to build hundreds of mini grids in rural areas unless investors, developers of mini grids, whether they're in New York or Nairobi or wherever they are, unless they're confident that there is demand, they won't do it because they're going to lose money. So it's essential to prove demand for electricity. Otherwise, they're not going to do it. We're stuck. So the big argument, maybe the strongest argument for emphasizing productive use and trying to create it, is to say, all right, we're going to give investors confidence that they can spend millions and millions and millions of dollars in Malawi building off-grid energy systems. Now, if that money were to come from Malawi and Malawians were to build it, that would be even better. So in this way, if we build productive use, we show people how the energy can be used, how the demand can be created, then that has to be influential with bankers in the long way as well. But it's going to take a lot, and frankly, we're going to race with time. So we've got to get this done. So for those of us in the studio, the big question, pretty obvious, what's our role? What are our options? How are we going to create it? How are we going to do this? Some of you are really accomplished in agriculture or agricultural processing. A couple people in the studio are producing energy themselves. So let me ask this question. How do we make the marriages between supply and demand that'll create productive use? So what's our role? So here we go. I break it down into 3 categories, and no surprise, okay? We're going to need requirements of 3 areas. In order to make it, yes,
when-
please.
Maybe it should be kind of a discussion.
That would be great.
Just to get, yeah,
No, I
sure.
had that scheduled for a couple slides ahead, but I would love anybody's questions or comments right now.
Mhm.
William, Chris, Melura, anybody? How many people are familiar with the whole concept of pure? Hello?
Hello, Christopher here. In my case, I'm very familiar with the pure
Right.
concept, and I'm on the supply side,
Good.
and I agree with everything here. And indeed, the major problem or challenge at present is integrating those 3 listed there: the supplier, the one demanding the energy, and for them to come together and say, let's do this. I think in Malawi, I don't know whether this is common everywhere. Usually people would be skeptical about someone who may not have a proven record, despite maybe being efficient and capable of doing something. So here's someone who needs the energy, a farmer, for example,
Yeah.
and here's somebody who has knowledge in supplying it. But for them to come together to say, let's do this, there is really need for that spark to ignite that relationship. So maybe I'm looking forward to hear what you have on facilitation systems.
Thank you. That's a very helpful
Wonderful.
comment. Anybody else have thoughts on that? I think I constantly hear from Malawians about the problem of trust in creating partnerships. If I don't have another comment, I'll go ahead, but Chief Anura, I do want discussion, and there are a couple of slides ahead from now. There's a one just devoted to discussion. So
Yeah,
I'll
go
go
ahead,
ahead.
please.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. So you guys know what the supply side is. It's obviously, creating electricity, hydro, however you do it. If you look at Hastings, Macondawiri up north, he's doing mini hydro. Other people are doing solar. As I said, Jones is doing solar home systems. And then we spend a lot of time on the biofuels, ag waste to energy, biogas, to create methane, which can be used for lighting. And if you really wanted to use methane, you could power a generator to create electricity, but that seems to me to be one step too far. The only other thing I'd say about the supply side is that really be aware that you could be a co-producer. You can use the energy you create. And I think a lot of people do that. A lot of people create energy because they have a specific use in mind. But the big challenge is, how do you do this at the village or small town level? So, as with everybody else, how do you match your energy production to specific productive uses? That's the game. That's what we have to figure out. The demand side, again, those of you, Chris and others who are really familiar with this, there's a lot of conversation. If you look at the 4th point down, a lot of conversation about the role of appliances. And that appliance is a really funny word. What are you thinking about? A washing machine, a radio? What are you thinking about? But, some people who are suppliers also supply appliances that can be used. And they do that with different financial models. And sometimes those appliances are very heavily subsidized. But it's just something to think about. As you create demand, you have to convince people how it is they might use the energy, which leads me to this comment on the demand side. For those of you who are running farms, the obvious thing to think about is, how do I electrify my farm? And I was hoping William, Chris, Doomy, and others, can you talk to me a little bit about this problem? What's the biggest barrier to electrifying a farm? Hello?
William,
Hello, Wayne.
Yes.
All right. Okay. Okay. So many farms, I would say, they have challenges when it comes to electrifying. The most basic thing should be costs, as in related to where most farms are located. You know, in Malawi, electric power sources are found mostly in urban areas. So let's say people may have a farm to say 20 hectares, 25 hectares, 30 hectares, or maybe 40 hectares or so, 100 hectares. Someone may have such kind of land for farming away from town. So for them to manage to bring electricity from urban places to such a remote area which has no electricity so far, it would be actually very costly. Since it has to take actually the government. If the government tries to bring electricity maybe in that area at a near trading center, then it's easier for that particular farm to have electricity. So an alternative in this scenario comes to maybe what we are discussing today, maybe looking at alternative forms of energy, like how to how you can use alternative forms of energy, let's say a solar power to bring electricity to such areas. I ever lived at a certain estate when I was growing up as a young child. They were actually growing tobacco, and that kind of tobacco that needs to use a lot of energy when it comes to its drying. It's traditionally known as kampopi. So it uses a lot of energy. So what they would do, I remember they would go and get cores. So once core was burnt, they would use a lot of coal to heat up and dry the tobacco leaves. So that was the entire process, right? But it took a lot of actually investment costs and everything else. But for local farmers, that would be a very long process. So what do local farmers do in turn? They find themselves using firewood. That is actually cutting a lot of trees. So I think the most challenge here is actually costs. I would say the current ways of energy supply are actually not cost effective when it comes to investment to smallholder farmers. So that's why smallholder farmers resort to using illegal sources, such as like cutting down trees and then providing energy on farms for actually different uses. So I think bringing in the concept of cheap, clean energy is actually ideal. Maybe it's good for us as entrepreneurs to actually think through such courses. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would like to agree with William. The major cost that I also find is the major challenge I find is the issue of cost. If you want to get electricity to some of the rural areas, like on the just even on the outskirts of Lilongwe, you find that you need to get a transformer, buy a transformer by yourself, because you are most likely going to be the only one who is able to afford electricity in that particular area. So, for instance, where I also grew up, many years ago, I can even look back and count how many houses were able to access electricity. It was a farmhouse where we were living, and my grandfather could afford electricity because he was working for the bank then. So, but many houses, I mean, around the place didn't have even electricity. So, really, the issue of cost is very big. And to get a transformer, for instance, it costs 3 million Malay kwacha. I think approximately it should be somewhere around 5,000 US dollars. So that's very prohibitive. You can't really go by that and have your farm running cost effective. Thanks.
But Dumi, when you use the transformer, you were tapping into the national electric grid, as opposed to using solar energy or something like that.
Yes, so that cost is much relates to the national grid.
Yeah, that's where I'm interested. I mean, I have a friend in Nairobi, and he made the case to me. He is Kenyan. He made the case to me, because he does it for a living, that solar dryers that are solar powered are really important to minimizing crop loss, particularly from maize. So I don't know whether that would be an issue in Malawi or not, but there are ways in which, if that were the case, then if farmers could collaborate to jointly purchase a solar dryer and each person using it, then it might actually save money before too long. But I hear you that the big challenge is cost. And I also leads me to wonder what other kind of collaborations could take place. I'm going to move on because I see the clock ticking. And
when we have got,
Can I keep in?
I really wanted an input from Christopher because of the kind of a project he's doing.
Okay, great. Go ahead, Chris.
I'll confine my challenges to distributed resources. So, yes, the issue is cost, but let me qualify it a bit. For me, I did a survey. So I sent out some electronic survey to farmers that I have an energy company and were willing to roll out these services. So can you consume our services? We had the overwhelming response. So farmers were interested. And the farmers would not have cash at a go or capital to procure these services. However, they are farmers. So at the end of the day, they will have some yield of which they can pay for these services. And we can draw up some mechanisms, say higher purchases or something like that, or pay as you go. So those are doable. However, for me now to generate that capital, because I will need maybe to install these systems. So I need to have that initial investment whilst I await my returns over some longer period from farmers in higher purchase. So this is my problem, cost in terms of initial investment to procure the technology and implement it. Yes.
So there's a time lag there before you start to get financial return. Is that correct?
Yes. However, profit there is guaranteed in the long term. But I have to inject something instantly before I recover my returns over some duration.
I see. And I would think that in many parts of the world, you would go and explain your case to the bank and get a loan. But with Malawian bank interest rates, I don't think that's an option.
Yes, in Malawi, the problem is in other countries, they have some sort of, I think, what can we call it? But there is that some sort of funding in place where entrepreneurs like me would go and maybe access it through some eligibility criteria. But in Malawi, funding institutions like banks would go like, do you have collateral? So they would expect me to have collateral, like maybe a building, for example, which I can put up for them to give me funds, things of that nature. So it's really challenging.
Yeah, I know there are initiatives in the legal community to allow people to use different kinds of collateral, even if they don't have title to their land and stuff like that. And I can look into that a little bit more because I see the problem. Thank you for explaining that. I really appreciate it.
However, there is under the Malawi Energy Regulatory Authority, MERA, there's what they call Rural Electrification Fund.
Right.
So ideally, they were supposed to be funding such initiatives, but for unknown reasons, to us, such a fund is far from those that need it.
I need to explore that some more too. I'd like to know more about that. But I really thank you for explaining it. I mean, does anyone have problems in explaining to local people the benefits of electrifying? Or is that not a problem at all? Do people already understand?
Melula, are you here? Melula, what about the group of women you are working with? The aspect of bringing like energy in their agri-business activities. What do you think? What's your perspective?
Yes, energy is really. Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Yes, we can hear you.
Energy is really a big issue. So for a long time, we have been wanting to not just be depending on rain-fed type of agriculture. We thought, I think, by having our women growing their crops all year round, that we will be able to maximize some profit. But then we have always been left down because of, I think, the issues others have already highlighted. So for you to set up a solar powered system, you need a lot of money, and it has been a problem for us. I'm happy that we are now discussing these issues. Perhaps in the long run, we'll be able to find a solution so that we are able to grow. I mean, fresh pumps, I think that would be pumping water, put that water in our tanks, and then be able to irrigate our crops. So that's the direction we are considering. We have already started speaking to people who would perhaps start by just thinking boreholes there, even as we wait for, even as we wait to install some pumps in there. So that's what I would say. Energy, I think, is a really a big issue in the localities we are working in. Over.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate everyone's participation and your comments. Again, we're in this together. Some of you have much more detailed knowledge on Malawi and electricity and farming than I do. I'm just trying to knit it all together so we have a strategy for going somewhere. We're going to cut off, I think, in a few minutes, but I want to make one last point. Two last points. First of all, let's continue this discussion. This is rich. This is good. Well, guess what? I wonder if some of us in Flame Tree in the studio could band together and create a compelling method to do site evaluation, because I think that skill, that knowledge is marketable to other organizations, to companies that want to build mini grids or other things. So I just wonder, I'm throwing this idea out there. If anybody wanted to, I've thought a lot about creating a team of people within the studio, maybe some others as well, to really develop a fast, reliable way to assess the community's potential for productive use. So I'm throwing it out there. As Chief Finero is really good at pointing out, we're more than an average incubator. We're more than a hybrid. Some people have gone on to teach in the DE labs. Some people have gone on to help us with a little bit of consulting. I think more of that will happen in the future. And maybe we could partner with some of you to do separate kinds of projects. So I'm just throwing this idea out there. It is absolutely necessary to, shall we say, grease the wheels a little bit and to make this happen. So I was thinking about Moses, well, I don't think it's with us this morning. He runs a theater group. In some countries, India, parts of East Asia, South Asia, they use theater in rural areas to really teach people, promote. So if you had a group of actors who went to village with really funny skits about electricity, maybe that sounds crazy to you, but it's not. It has worked in other places. So you can think about supply and demand. You don't think of theater being in the middle, but we've got to find ways to get people excited. You have to find ways to say, to have villages say, I want electricity now. So that's what that's all about. That's what facilitation is. Chief, we're running perilously close to the end. Do you want me to continue, or shall we do it again another day?
Now continue, just maybe a slide or two.
All right. I don't know how much time we have. Not much, probably.
Of course, yeah, go ahead.
All right. So here it is for all of you. Where do you fit, and what matches can you make? If you have, some of you are suppliers, some of you are demanders, if you will, potential pure. So how do we do that? And for Malawi, the government did a study. What's the highest potential for using electricity? Again, go back to that problem of convincing developers, financiers to build hundreds of mini grids. How do you do that? And so manufacturing obviously uses a whole lot of electricity. But how do you do that in rural areas? That's hard. Things like welding use a lot of electricity, but it's very intermittent. And in rural areas, the demand isn't as great as you might imagine. But look at that, the second one down, hospitality. That's a fancy word for tourism. So could tourist areas become critical in spreading electricity? The answer is yes. But you get to those last two, agro-processing and agriculture, that's probably where most of us are involved. And while they don't use as much electricity as manufacturing, we can still make a great contribution that way. So now I'm showing you what you already know. But these are some of the uses of electricity in agriculture. And um, I'm not sure how to comment on this, except to say, maybe as you think about electrifying a farm and you think about building demand by bringing in other farmers or bringing in a local village, maybe these are some of the jobs, some of the functions that could be developed that use electricity. The post-harvest storage thing, keeping it dry, pasteurization. Again, people think about heating, but refrigeration is such a big deal. Obviously, oil pressing. So, I leave this out, and I think probably you could all add to that list. But I think that one of the goals of the DESTUDIO is to have everybody step back a little bit sometimes and say, okay, are there other things I could be doing that would augment my main work? So I throw this list out there. Power juicing. And other sectors, again, if you're out there, suppose you're electrifying your farm. Look at category number 2. If you had power to your farm, could you help other local people set up a carpentry shop that was powered with electricity? I don't know. The looming, clothing manufacture, printing. I think for this to happen, we have to think on our farms and other businesses, hey, what else could local people do so we can aggregate the demand? I think, Doomy, Chris, you've been great about explaining the problem of cost in doing these things. You're very articulated now. I really appreciate that. But let's also think about what else could be done in a local level, in the community level. What other businesses could be started that would boost the amount of energy used? So here's a summary. I honestly think that Pure is critical to ending energy poverty. If we can make the marriages between supply and demand using the people in the middle, the facilitators, I think we could put a big dent in the off-grid problem, creating demand. And obviously, have a role. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. 2 last comments. One, that's important to know. Some external funding and investment are going to be linked to Pure. That, Chris and others say, yeah, they're very well versed in this concept, but you're ahead of the curve in so many ways. People in the financial community don't know it well, but they're learning. And so I think there's more interest among investors in supporting projects that are pure. So couching your work, your project, your enterprise in terms of the larger problem of energy poverty and the role that productive use has in solving energy poverty, it's good language, it's good context for you. I hope obviously that DESTUDIO can be a platform to create the kind of partnerships between supply demand facilitation that we need. And lastly, that word, okay? So I'm done, and I appreciate your comments. And any other time for comments, let's go. What are we thinking?
Yes, I have something on where you're talking about FDI, looking at the possibility of scouting and aggregating the consumption of energy out there. Where you were talking about maybe having some drama to attract people, things like that. What I would say for me, the problem with people on the ground is not really knowing or wanting or having that will to come together and consume energy services. There are partnerships out there, lots of them, in the villages.
Uh-huh.
Like people are keeping goats as a group, doing what as a group, putting money together as groups. It's happening in the villages almost everywhere. But maybe the problem that people in the villages or rural areas have is the financial aspect. So when they come together as a group, can they keep the investment? How can I say? Okay, let's talk of a cooperative, for example. It's a legal entity, right? So it has its own finances as a group, as that entity, but the individual members as well, they are also looking at their finances. So people in the village would expect money to be in their pocket. So they go to a group, they contribute, they do whatever. At the end of the day, they want money to go back into their pocket. They should be seeing it. But they need to be convinced that money can also be kept in their investment as a group, that legal entity, where they can earn dividends at the end of the year, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is the scenario that we would want. So if we invest the energy aspect, you bring the supplier, the energy supplier, you would want to recover like the returns on investment. So this may not happen at a go. It may be after some time. So you would want to deal with. Hello? Hello? Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
So you would rather deal with one entity as opposed to several farmers when you are recovering these funds. So you really would want villagers that would understand that we have, let's say, a cooperative society limited, where we'll keep our investment, which will be repaying our loan, something like that. So they need that financial education.
Yeah.
At the same time, this facilitating entity would be very critical in terms of what can I facilitating, say, registration of this cooperative society with government entities and things like that. Bringing the renewable energy suppliers in one basket. So I think if FTI is to look at formulating such an entity, these are the critical areas that you need to look into. As for us, we know where these villagers are and what they need. So we are readily available with that information. We can supply it.
Oh, thanks, Chris, for that suggestion.
I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah.
I lost you. Lost everyone for a couple minutes.
So, Chris, in other words, what you're saying is FDI should be coming in terms of formalizing, working with the government or bringing the government on board to formalize these groups into cooperatives, isn't it?
Yes, as well as maybe from government, maybe bringing the Ministry of Agriculture and those training institutions like ADDs and what have you to come train these farmers, things like that.
Awesome. All right. Okay, thank you. I think we've taken note of that, and we'll see what we can do. By the way, we have already started with you, Chris. So anyway, sure. Yes, Hector.
Hello. Thanks, everyone. I know I'm late to the party, but I just wanted to chime in on the comment that Chris has actually shared. So very right. I think cooperatives is actually a way to go because that's another way of actually like mobilizing the capital, the assets that people have to actually be able maybe to access loans. I think in a formal sense, access to capital or financing, it can be provided when people are actually working as a cooperative. I think there are lots of risks that can be managed when you're actually working as a cooperative. But my experience now in setting up a cooperative, I'm actually looking at a community very remote, right? A community very remote. At the moment, if you want to actually establish a cooperative, the registration process, there are lots of bureaucratic issues that actually come in. So, for example, if you are in Nsanja, you want to actually establish a cooperative, the people to do the training from the Ministry of Trade, they will come from Lilongwe, right? They will come from Lilongwe, and then you have to actually cater for the cost for them to actually come to Nsanja to do the training to that rural community. Now, if people have actually mobilized their little resources, and now they have to actually, the training is about 5 days, and then you have to actually set all those per diems for those people. It's a constraint to people who are already constrained in terms of resources to be providing for that. Perhaps what we could be thinking is, how do we bridge that sort of gap so that it's more, there should be an incentive for people to consider registering as a cooperative, because the cost or the transaction cost of doing that sound feasible for most people, because the people we target who actually go into cooperatives are people who actually need it, and they don't really have the luxury of actually putting allowances to these people. I know when I spoke with someone from the Ministry of Trade, they said ideally it should be the Ministry of Trade actually catering for those costs, but the government doesn't provide them with those resources, right? And I said, why don't you decentralize, have people trained in the district councils to actually be providing that at the district level, because it reduces the cost. But they are not willing to actually do that. They want to actually be managing from the central level. That is actually an issue. So maybe if FTI could actually be able to facilitate that conversation to the registration of cooperatives or establishment of cooperatives, even supporting them in terms of monitoring, can be done with structures at the district level. It will simplify the thing. And the other thing is also for example, having investment in structures, or people having the patience to actually leave their investments to mature, maybe to get dividends at the end of a particular period. What we should understand, I think, as ones who are working in energy, is to understand the short-term needs of the communities that we work with. Until we are able to actually meet this, then there is no incentive for people to actually consider, to have the patience of leaving their money within a certain structure or investment when they're actually struggling with actually small basic needs on the ground. So I think it has to be a gradual process of graduating people from where they are to where we want them to be, to start investing into these structures. So I think it will take, it's a process, but I think it's something that can actually happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Hector.
Thanks, Hector. Okay, any
Just to
comments?
add on what Hector said, is it okay? Can I add on what Hector said?
Of course.
Just yeah, on the gap between trainers of cooperatives, maybe FTI can lobby for their accreditation mechanism. So like what we have, ACCA is maybe in the UK, but they're offering courses through MCA Malawi. So FTI should be able to train a group, and the ministry should be able to register that group, not them necessarily going on the ground. That's okay. The second comment on short-term needs and long-term needs. You see, in the cooperative setup, you have farmers, for example, they cultivate maize. They sell this maize to the cooperative. So the cooperative buys from a farmer. So level one, the farmer has gotten his money there. He has sold to the cooperative. Then level two is where the cooperative as an entity now is maybe selling that maize after value addition. So yes, I agree with my colleague that short-term needs, but I'm trying to add that you find that the setup also somehow looks at that challenge as well.
Well, I'm really taking notes. I think we were kind of not much involved in supporting the DESTUDIO members in terms of registration of cooperatives. I think this kind of discussion is kind of shaping our work. I can also recall that Mwerula and who else? Is it David Njaid on this call? Of course, Dumisan as well. You are all working with some group of farmers who would at some point want to be registered as cooperatives. So thank you so much for bringing this up, Hector and Christopher. I think let's keep the conversation and see how best we can work together in this. Just to mention, Hector and everybody on this call. I've been involved recently. I've been involved in some discussions with a certain DFID funded project. It's called Traction. So one of the things that they are looking at under Traction is what kind of steps or what kind of policies can be formulated at governance level that can enhance entrepreneurship in this country. And these are some of the discussions I think we need to bring on the table. I would say the government is on the government side. There is political will to absorb this kind of thoughts, this kind of opinions. I think there's just been a lack of active players who can take this up and who can show that indeed there's real need on the ground for such for a change in such kind of legislation. So I think we'll discuss with Wayne and all of you here on how best we can be form a movement and work together with other players in the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Malawi, the likes of MHub, etc. We raise one voice and we advocate for this, and likely we can see a change. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I learned a lot. Thank you, everyone.
All right. I think that marks the end of our workshop today, almost an hour. However, I would like us to do an exercise. And on this forum, as we are talking, we have got others who are suppliers of energy, renewable energy, Hector and Christopher, of course, at different levels. And we have got those who can create demand for renewable energy. Number one, I would like to ask, how can we partner? Like Dumisani, how can you tap into what Hector and Christopher is doing? How can you do that? And vice versa. Christopher, Hector, how can you take advantage of what William is doing? Mwerula is doing. Mwerula is working with a group of women somewhere in Lilongwerulo. It's an off-grid area. They have a need. Yes, Mwerula? Yes, Gami?
You have been breaking. I'm not sure whether it is just at my end or you have been breaking to everyone.
Okay, I'll try to write the question on our WhatsApp group if you're not getting me clearly.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
But all I'm saying is, can we find ways that we can partner within the DESTUDIO, suppliers and those who need the energy or whose communities may need energy? What kind of collaborations, what kind of partnerships can we develop? And the other one is for those who are suppliers. Rather, those who are in the agriculture sector, how can you integrate the element of renewable energy in whatever you are doing now? How can you do that? So thank you so much. Those are the two exercises. I want us to just to provoke this kind of discussion. I expect a submission of that exercise next week on Friday. If we can do that, come up with your ideas. And there's a challenge that Wayne has given us, Christopher, create a company affiliated with FTI to assess community readiness for renewable energy and the local potential for productive use of renewable energy. Frametree Initiative would like to partner with you as a social enterprise. Are you ready to do such kind of a work? Would like to know, would like to hear from you. Maybe we can partner. Maybe as DESTUDIO members, we can partner to carry out such kind of work. We are ready to partner with you as Frametree Initiative. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I want to interject. Thank you, Chief Engineer. I want to interject that I'm really interested in to know what you have to say. You know, we can call this an assignment, but we're a group of adults working together here, and I'm really interested in your ideas. So, you know, to me, it's more than an assignment, okay? And in regard to the last comment, you know, thinking about creating a group that could do community assessment. Tell me if it's if you think the idea is awful, say so. It's okay. I once met a famous scientist, and before I went in to meet him, his assistant said to me, he's a man of 1,000 ideas. 999 stink. The other one wins the Nobel Prize. Okay? So we all have a lot of ideas, and I'm just trying to help us find innovative ways to make progress, okay? So that's it. Thank you very much, everyone.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks.
All right. Okay. Bye-bye. Enjoy your evening.
You too.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone. And I'll send the PowerPoint to Chief Engineer, because Hector asked if it could be shared, most certainly.
Sure.
All right. Take care, everyone. I'm leaving now. Chief
Wayne.
Engineer, I'll talk to you in an hour.
Oh, yeah, sure. In an hour. Thank you.
Take care. Bye, everyone.
Bye, Winnie.
William
Yes, sir, Chief.
and David, well, how was the talk? You're in the agriculture sector. How was today's discussion? David, I didn't hear from you. Yes, William, you can pick it up.
It was actually great. I think when solar technology was just coming to Malawi, especially to Africa, we never thought that it's going to grow big. I think companies that capitalized on solar technology early are now bigger companies before many people had materialized on solar energy. So I think where the world is getting to, solar energy is really needed, because look at our countries, then they cannot provide solar. I mean power. They can't provide power anymore. Enough power for everyone, for households, for industries. So I think people who rise in this area, we can start as small as that now. But I think if we put much energy and patience also, and look at how best we can be the solar providers in the near future, looking at many aspects, I think, yeah, there's a huge market in it.
Okay,
Sure.
Mwelula, one of the agendas in the Development 2063 is agricultural productivity. You're in the agriculture sector, working with those women. How do you see the integration of renewable energy can indeed lead to agriculture, increased agricultural productivity in regard to the farmers you're working with?
Yeah, so I think that's what I started to talk about. But there is really that big need for us to consider energy on a serious note, because you see, it is very difficult in Malawi land-based type of agriculture. Because in moments where there is crop, you are finished. For me, I don't look at energy that would simply be used in people's homes. To me, that is second. But the first thing would be for them to produce more. Yeah, produce for the year round, be able to produce more, be able to supply, they will be able to money. And that will push them to what I would call phase number 2, where now a poor farmer would be thinking about energy in his home or in her home. The other thing is that for a long time, I think value addition has been quite of a challenge. But I think if our farmers are to maximize profit, then perhaps value addition is something that we cannot run away from. And this is where solar energy I think comes in. You talk of packaging, processing of some kind. These are things that I think we need energy. But if we talk in energy just for consumption in people's homes, then that is going to be difficult. We do a lot of civic education because you see energy market is perceived as something that is luxurious, and for people who have that perception that I think it is expensive and not affordable. So I think that's what I would say.
Oh, awesome. Yes, David, you have not spoken today. David? Hello, David. Hello, David. Oh, okay, fine. Well, thank you, everybody. I think this is a great discussion. And Melula, our next discussion will be when we look at energy, we just talk about solar. But another thing another discussion we want to have is on how can, like the little farmers you're working with, how can they be producers of energy using agri-waste? So that'll be an interesting discussion. We look forward to having it in the coming weeks. Otherwise, thank you for participating. Wishing you a lovely evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Okay, bye bye.